All right, here's the last lesson of Chapter 11, Jackson and the Bank, the BUS, Bank of the United States, established by Andrew Hamilton, also known, if you remember, as the National Bank, counting all the beans of money, tariffs, excise taxes coming into the United States system so that they can make sure that we pay off our debt back in that Hamiltonian plan, explaining the economic and political issues that affect the presidential elections and increased sectionalism tension between the North and the South. Here as we go, it continues to build, and Andrew Jackson is at the center of it. We also need to explain some reasons why it is that Andrew Jackson hated the Bank of the United States and his viewpoint on that. This cartoon is a nice little cartoon. Here's Andrew Jackson, General Jackson slaying the many-headed monster, which is the bank. I have name Mr. Biddle. He's going to be the head of the bank and many investors connected to it. Closer shot to that. National Bank. President Jackson hates the bank. If you remember, he is a states' rights kind of a guy. He's union, but he's states' rights as well. Didn't like the bank because he, in his mind, felt that it was only helping Easterners who are wealthy. It was established, if you remember right, away early on in our year, we talked about how the bank was established with some private money, with oversight by the United States government, but he didn't feel this helped the average person. And so only those who were powerful, mostly private northern investors, were benefiting from this, and it held, again, all of the federal government's money, tariff money. The president of this bank, Nicholas Biddle, was from a wealthy family, completely different background. Jackson doesn't like him whatsoever, or anybody of that class necessarily. He's quite suspicious. Jackson's a guy who grew up in poverty and was a self-made guy. And so this bank, to him, and those who oppose it, like Jefferson, felt that this was a concentration of power. And when money is concentrated in a few hands, that is dangerous. His opponents in the campaign of 1832 are going to utilize this knowledge of his hatred of the bank against him, or at least they're hoping to. His opponents in the election of 1832, Henry Clay, Daniel Webster. Henry Clay, if you remember, was Speaker of the House. That was behind the corrupt bargain, and became Secretary of State under John Quincy Adams. As a result of that, they plan to use this Bank of the United States problem that he has to defeat Jackson. And so they go to Biddle and they say, Bill, you need to apply for a renewed charter, a document that says the charter and the bank can operate for another set of X number of years before the election. The old one, the old charter, making it legally operating by Congress, isn't ending until 1836. Election's 1832, 4 years ahead of time. And they're doing this because they know he hated it, so they want to introduce it and bring up the issue. And they're betting that Jackson would veto the Bank of the United States recharter after 1836. And the result would be that people would be so unhappy with Jackson that they wouldn't vote for him as president, and it would cause his defeat. Clay would then become president. So the charter bill was ready to sign, and it was introduced, run through Congress. Jackson was sick in bed, and his friend, Vice President Martin Van Buren, said, you know, Mr. President, this is what's happening. And Jackson is deathly sick in bed. And Jackson said, the bank is trying to kill me, but I will kill it. He vetoed the bill. And so, in his mindset, he felt that this bank was unconstitutional, despite the fact that the Supreme Court case, McCullough versus Maryland, the Marshall Court said that Maryland can't tax the Bank of the United States, the branch of it in Maryland. Doesn't make sense. It's backwards. The Constitution allows for it through the necessary and proper clause. It was made by Congress for the welfare of the country and the people. Therefore, it's legal. Jackson felt it went too far. The laws make the rich richer. Not good, according to Andrew Jackson. Election of 1832, it's a backfire. Henry Clay doesn't become president again. Most supported Jackson's veto. The common people said, yeah, that's great. We don't like those wealthy people, and we don't like the powers that be, and this is something that's going to be better for the country. We're going to bring back a little bit of power down to the states. And so this old charter ends in 1836 and a bus is dead for a period of time. And the money, before the bank is even done with in 1836, the money from the bank is withdrawn by Jackson's administration and put into smaller state pet banks. There are a few pet banks, or banks that were favorites of Andrew Jackson, that the money was drawn into. And so this weakened the bank financially and is going to cause some problems and is going to be a factor in a little national event that's going to cause everybody a great deal of stress. Jackson finishes off his second term, doesn't run for a third term, and the Democratic Republicans choose Martin Van Buren as his successor. And in this election of 1836, it's significant because we have a new party arising, and they had nominated 3 different candidates. Each one was pretty strong, again, kind of favorite son type individuals from various regions of the United States. And you can kind of tell based on their color coding probably where they had some influence or they were favorite. And this election was very split up, and it does help Martin Van Buren become president, besides the fact that Jackson was very popular as well, and so this is Jackson's guy, and so he's president. And as soon as he becomes president, there becomes an event known as the Panic of 1836 coming up next. But again, here's our first party system. You can kind of see the history of things in events. Death of the Federalists after the War of 1812, era of good feelings. We're all Democratic Republicans. And then we have the Democratic Republicans eventually electing Jackson after the corrupt bargain, and our national Republicans on the other side of that corrupt bargain, and now the second party system is forming. And here's what they're all about. It might be important to maybe make a list of their thinking here in your notebook somewhere, if you pause this, because it's a little bit similar to some political thinking today, but our political parties might be switched a little bit, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But our second party system forms, and the Whig Party forms because there are people who very much hate Andrew Jackson and feel that he has overstepped his bounds as president. He is somewhat acting like we'll go back just a little bit, king or a monarch. You'll do a little analysis of that at the end of the lesson here, and what is in that cartoon that points to what he's done or is doing that is wrong. And so our Whig Party, our second party system, and the Democratic Party under Jackson has its new opposition here. And this is where it's going a little bit later on in the year. All right? Pay attention to and jot down some notes about their thinking. It's familiar to you. Talked about a lot of those things. President Van Buren, the leader laissez-faire like Jefferson, were in states' rights, but he does some things that irritate some people. 1840, he gets Congress to establish an independent federal treasury, and the government stops depositing money in these private banks. And it was considered to be too risky because in what develops in the Panic of 1837 is a lot of federal money and tax dollars lost. The money that was lost because of the fact that these private banks that had, these pet banks that had this money from the Bank of the United States redistributed into it, that money was loaned out into people's farms and their businesses and such, and therefore lost in the Panic of 1837. So that meant the United States government lost money to operate with, to defend the country with, and that's not a good idea. So Martin Van Buren comes up with something called a treasury system. This cannot happen again, and so everyone criticizes this as kind of basically going back to what we had before a Bank of the United States. This Panic of 1837 was severe. Land values dropped, investments declined, banks failed, thousands of businesses closed, people lost their jobs. In the South, the price of cotton dropped to record lows, and farmers had lost a significant amount of their property, and farms had a lot of debt. People couldn't afford food or rent. This cartoon kind of portrays. It was a bad time. And as these things happen, then we have things shifting in elections. And we also have people moving west to find greater opportunities. And that'll lead us into our next unit, the westward expansion across the Mississippi out into the west coast, Oregon country and such, in the 1830s and late 1830s, 1840s. So the election of 1840 comes about, and we have a country that's stressed economically, and William Henry Harrison and the Whigs will take advantage of it. Remember, he was the War of 1812 hero. He was famous for defeating Tecumseh at the Battle of Tippecanoe. Didn't actually kill him personally, but he also chooses John Tyler. That's where he's from here. He's from Virginia, a planter from Virginia. Planter meaning he's plantation owner, slave owner, as vice president. And they had a slogan, Tippecanoe and Tyler too, has a nice little ring to it. War heroes are great for presidential candidates. In this, they come up with this great slogan, and it has a great deal of ring to it, and they also try to get the votes from the people, the common people, the people out in the West, rural people that love Andrew Jackson and the Democratic Party and Andrew Van Buren, and they do it by trying to portray themselves as common people. Neither of these individuals, Harrison or Tyler, were common people. They were of upper class from the East, but they come up with this little bit of advertising that highlights that they are one of them. And so this actually had some good success. Combined with the economic stress, they got support from laborers and farmers who supported Jackson, and they win the War of 1812, known as the hickory stick, that is used to, hickory, Andrew Jackson, used to leverage the states that had supported Jackson previously, moving them in their direction. So, again, Harrison was rich, man of the people, criticized Van Buren as the King Martin, spending people's money on fancy, lavish furniture in the White House and being wasteful and all that kind of thing. And Harrison wins by a wide margin. He's the very first president for the newly formed Whig Party, fairly newly formed Whig Party. Inauguration Day, 1841, it's bitter, nasty, cold. Harrison insists on giving a speech without a hat or coat. He gets sick. He dies 32 days later. He's the shortest term of any president. And Vice President John Tyler becomes president. Little note to yourself, he had 17 kids, big family. Tyler's presidency, a little bit of controversy. Tyler was once a Democrat, and he was swayed over to the Whig Party, and that means that he probably was more Democratic thinking than Whig thinking. And Tyler, when he becomes president, vetoed significant numbers of Whig bills that conflict with his Democratic thinking. And the recharter of the bus, to revive the bus that Jackson killed, he vetoed that. And so this created a great deal of conflict with the Whig Party and Whig Party leadership. Lack of loyalty outrages them. They kick him out of the president. He's the only president without a political party in our history. And his cabinet members resign, except the Secretary of State, Daniel Webster, who was from the North. And New Hampshire is where he's from. And the Whigs really couldn't agree on their party goals. And they couldn't get together at this point in time a little bit. And they really started to vote according to their loyalties. Northern Whigs were thinking a little bit different than Southern Whigs. This is the sectionalism that's arising here. And the conflict, again, over issues and what can or cannot be done is driven by party lines, old party lines, party thinking, sectional thinking, and it leads us to the election of 1844, in which Henry Clay runs again. He switches to the Whig Party, and he loses to Democratic candidate James Polk, our 11th president, 1844. And we'll pick up with that election again another time to talk about the significance of James Polk. People are starting to move west significantly, and especially because of the economic stress of 1837. And it's going to cause some big things to start happening. And sectional differences and conflict are going to rise and grow even more. So under Jackson, we have this criticism of him. In class, you're going to be doing a little analysis on the artist's point of view here about Jackson and what it is that he's trying to get people to think or do according to what is being portrayed here. But our Jackson presidency is very significant. Again, a Westerner becoming president for the very first time, signaling that anybody can become president, despite the fact that he was a slave owner and was very wealthy. He rose from a basic background and poor conditions everyman kind of status, establishes the spoils system that led to political corruption on a national scale. This is one of the reasons you're going to want to note for yourself that this Whig Party comes around. They hated that spoils system. This is not in your notes, by the way, so you might want to just add a little bit of it. The killing of the bus, again, resulted in bank failures, and the way in which he took the money out of the bank helped bring about economic stress and is a part of the cause of the Panic of 1837. And he really challenged the authority of the Supreme Court in several court cases that we've talked about before involving the Cherokee, the Bank of the United States, vetoed significant amounts of legislation. Results in people moving in a different direction, a new party, our second party system. So make sure that you do a little left side review, quick summary of the economic issues facing the president, presidential elections, how they impact that presidential election, and increased sectionalism in the country, the division, sectionalism, the division between Northerners and Southerners, seeing things differently, based on our economic activity and driving our political thinking and actions. Here's a list of things that could help you. Make sure if you got time to get something done, do it now. Don't wait till later. And make hay.